One quiet evening at a gas station, a black nurse and her young son stop to refuel on their way home. But their peaceful night takes a brutal turn when two white police officers arrive. What starts as mocking words quickly escalates into violent actions. But just when their lives hang in the balance, a pair of headlights cuts through the darkness, and the moment her brother steps out of the car, those officers are about to regret choosing the wrong family to harass. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. It was just past 9 o'clock on a Monday night when Danielle Brooks pulled her silver Honda Accord into Pump 6 of the gas station off Highway 83. The road was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful, just empty. Light rain sprinkled down in thin, lazy streaks, barely enough to wet the windshield, but enough to coat the blacktop in a glossy sheen. The tall lamps above buzzed faintly and cast a washed-out yellow glow over the lot, making the place look more like a forgotten parking lot than a place meant to stop and rest. Danielle stepped out of the car with a soft grunt, her body stiff after a 12-hour shift in the ER. Her navy blue scrubs were still damp at the edges from a spill earlier that day, and the white badge clipped to her chest bearing her name and photo swayed slightly as she walked. Her face was beautiful but drawn, tired in the way that working mothers often were. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back into a messy bun, lips pressed into a thin line. But her movements were steady, practiced. This wasn't new. This was just Monday. In the back seat, her 10-year-old son, Jalen, sat with his knees pulled up under his tablet. He wore a gray hoodie with the sleeves pushed halfway up his arms and a disposable mask over his face, more out of habit than fear. His asthma made cold nights tricky. His inhaler lay on the seat beside him like a loaded gun, close, necessary, ready. Danielle tapped the window lightly. "I'm going to grab a bottle of water. 2 minutes. You good, baby?" Jalen looked up, eyes half hidden under his hood, and gave her a thumbs up. "I'm doing spelling." "Good, lock the door." She smiled faintly and walked toward the pump. Less than 30 feet away, a police cruiser sat idling near the air machine. Inside were 2 white officers. Brent Holloway, mid-40s with a thick jaw and a sunburned neck, and Marcus Doyle, leaner, younger, with a buzz cut and a habit of cracking his knuckles every few minutes like he needed something to hit. Their eyes followed Danielle as soon as she stepped out of the car. "Look at that," Doyle muttered, sipping from a paper coffee cup. "Late model Accord, custom rims, scrubs. You think that's hers?" Holloway gave a short laugh. "Please, no way. That's somebody else's whip. Let's go find out." They got out slowly, deliberately, not running, not even brisk, just calculated, like they had time and confidence to spare. Danielle noticed them immediately as they approached. She straightened instinctively, standing taller, one hand still on the pump handle. "Evening," she said evenly, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "You own this car, ma'am?" Holloway asked, eyes scanning everything but her face. Her hands, her pockets, the badge on her chest, then down to her shoes. "Yes, sir. Bought it last month. Plates are up to date," she replied, reaching into her pocket for her license and registration. Her voice stayed level, careful, polite, but not submissive. Doyle walked around the back of the car, pretending to inspect the plate. "We got a report on a car matching this description, just doing our job." Danielle handed over the documents. "Of course, here's everything you need." Neither of them looked at the papers. Holloway just let them hang in his hand while staring directly at her. "You work at River Hill General?" he asked. "Yes, I'm a nurse, night shift." "Funny," he said, tilting his head. "You don't really look like someone who drives a car like this." Danielle blinked once, then twice. She didn't respond, not right away. She'd heard it before. She knew exactly what it meant. Inside the car, Jalen had stopped doing homework. He was watching through the window now, posture stiff, hands resting on his knees. Something felt off. His mom's shoulders had tensed. Her words had slowed down. Her hands weren't moving as much as usual. He reached into his backpack quietly, pulled out his phone. The screen lit up dimly under the shadow of his hoodie. He typed a message fast. "Mom's in trouble. 2 cops. Gas station HY 83. Come now." He sent it to one contact, Uncle T. Then he swiped to voice memos and tapped record, sliding the phone under his jacket and tucking it near his chest. Danielle hadn't seen him do it. She was focused now, eyes on Holloway, who took a step closer, close enough that she could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You got anything in that car we need to know about?" he asked. "My son," she said calmly. "That's who's in the car. 10 years old. Doing homework. That's it." Doyle leaned toward the passenger window, cupping his hand to peer inside. Jalen froze, but kept recording. 10, huh? He look a little older. That him in the back?" Doyle said loudly, as if trying to stir something. Danielle nodded. "Yes, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't scare him." Just then, she spotted something that made her gut drop. A paper sign taped to the door of the gas station shop. "Security cameras temporarily out of order under maintenance." She inhaled sharply. The timing couldn't be worse. No backup, no witnesses, and the two men in front of her just shifted slightly. Like they knew it too. Holloway grinned, eyes glinting. Well, he said softly, almost to himself. "Guess it's just us here tonight." And Jalen, sitting in the back seat, holding his breath, trying not to shake, kept recording. The red light blinked under his hoodie. Still on. Still listening. And that's how it began, not with shouting, not with flashing lights, but with a smile that didn't mean safety, and a question that wasn't really a question at all. Danielle could feel it. Something had shifted. The kind of tension that doesn't just rise, it coils, tightens, like a storm hovering just above the ground, waiting to strike. Officer Holloway had stopped pretending. His smile was gone now, replaced with something colder, more settled. Officer Doyle stood just behind him, arms crossed, jaw tight, like he'd already decided how the night would end. Danielle felt her chest tighten. Not from fear, not yet, but from calculation. She knew men like them. She'd worked ER long enough to treat bruises caused by badges. And the cameras weren't watching. "I'd like my ID back now," Danielle said clearly, hands still resting on the gas pump, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "There's no issue here." Holloway didn't move. He stared at her like she was an itch he didn't want to scratch yet. Then slowly, deliberately, he tossed her documents back toward her chest. They fluttered down, landing partly on the wet pavement. "You getting smart with me, nurse lady?" he asked. "That's how you talk to law enforcement where you come from?" "I'm talking to you like a citizen," she replied, bending down calmly to pick up the papers, though her knees trembled as she did. "You pulled me over without cause. You have my ID." I cooperated. Doyle took a step closer to the car. "Maybe she's hiding something. You've seen the way she keeps looking back at the car?" "I'm looking at my son," Danielle said, standing straight again. "He's 10. He's scared." "You're scaring him." 10? Holloway said, eyes narrowing. 10 years old, sitting in a car like that this time of night? What kind of mom brings a kid out here that late? You sure he's even yours?" Danielle's jaw clenched. "Don't talk about my son." Inside the car, Jalen's breathing had started to change, fast, shallow. He'd tilted sideways now, hands gripping the inhaler but not yet using it, trying to wait, trying not to panic. But the air was thinner, like something had drained it out of the car, and the officers' voices were getting louder. "You want to play games, huh?" Doyle said suddenly, circling around to the driver's side. "Go ahead, call someone. Hell, call the goddamn president." Danielle pulled her phone from her scrub pocket, thumbing for her brother's number. Her hand was shaking now, not from weakness, from fury. But before she could hit dial, Holloway lunged forward. "Oh, no, you don't!" With one slap of his hand, he knocked the phone to the ground. It skittered across the concrete, landing near the rear tire. "You don't make calls when we're talking to you." "That's my personal property," Danielle shouted, stepping forward instinctively. And then it happened. Holloway's hand came down fast across her shoulder, shoving her back against the car. Doyle moved in from the other side, grabbing her wrist hard. "Stop resisting," he barked, twisting her arm up, ignoring the sound she made, half pain, half shock. "Let me go, my son is watching." "That little shit," Doyle spat, jerking his head toward the back seat. "He's faking, he ain't sick. Look at him, just trying to get us off your ass." Inside the car, Jalen gasped. His vision blurred, his chest burned. He lifted the inhaler to his mouth, but his hands trembled too much to press it. "Mom," he wheezed, barely audible, eyes wide with panic. "Mom, I can't." Danielle screamed. "He's having an asthma attack. He needs his inhaler." "Shut the hell up," Holloway shouted, and in one brutal motion he yanked open the rear door, leaned in, and slapped the inhaler from Jalen's hands. "Ain't no kid gonna fake an episode just 'cause his mama's in cuffs." Jalen cried out, a dry, broken sound, and doubled over, wheezing, trying to breathe. Danielle broke free from Doyle's grip for a split second, lunging toward the back seat, grabbing the inhaler off the floor and shoving it into her son's hands. "Baby, press down, press it now." Doyle grabbed her from behind again, wrenching her backward. "That's it. That's resisting. You just earned yourself a real charge." "You're hurting her," Jalen screamed, voice raw between gasps. "Oh, now the little one's got a mouth too?" Holloway hissed, slamming the car door. "You both think you're above the law tonight? You think we won't throw your ass down right here?" Danielle was shaking now, not from fear, but from rage, from helplessness, from the burning unfairness of it all. The air snapped before the sound even registered. Tires screeched. Rubber tore at the wet asphalt like claws. A black SUV came to a hard stop just yards from where Danielle knelt, cradling her son's shaking body in her arms. The headlights burned through the drizzle, cutting a harsh line across the scene, illuminating the officers like a spotlight no one had asked for. Officer Holloway instinctively reached for his belt. Doyle stepped back, hand twitching near his taser. But they froze as the door opened, and a tall black man in a dark tailored suit stepped out. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He walked with the kind of presence that made people stand straighter whether they liked it or not. He had broad shoulders, a clean shave, the square-set jaw of a man who'd fought in courtrooms that could bury reputations, and when he reached the front of the scene, he lifted a leather badge case high with one hand. The gold emblem inside caught the light like a knife. "Mayor Terrence Brooks," he said, voice low but clear enough to echo off the gas pumps. "Remove your hands from my sister, right now." The silence was immediate, cold, sudden. Even the blinking light of the broken gas station camera felt like it had stopped for half a second. Holloway lowered his hand, slowly. Doyle looked at him, uncertain. "She was resisting," Holloway began. "No," Terrence cut him off. "What she was doing was surviving. What you were doing was violating damn near every line in the book." Doyle tried to find his voice. "We had reason to believe." "You had no reason," Terrence said, his eyes locked on Doyle like steel clamps. "You had no warrant, no cause, and now you've laid hands on an unarmed woman, in front of her child, in a neighborhood where you thought nobody would notice. But somebody did." He turned, gestured toward the street, and like summoned shadows, 2 marked patrol units from River Hill's Central Precinct rolled in, sirens now silenced, lights spinning silently. Doors opened fast. Uniformed officers stepped out with clipped urgency. One of them nodded to Terrence without question. "We got the call," the sergeant said. "Orders from dispatch. Standing by for your directive." "Officers Holloway and Doyle," Terrence said calmly, "are to be relieved of their weapons and placed under administrative custody. Right here, right now." "What?" Holloway barked, spinning toward the other cops. "You can't be serious. You taking his word for it? He's family." "And a federal official," the sergeant replied. "And you're not above protocol." Bill hesitated, but when 2 younger officers approached with gloves on, Holloway finally unstrapped his belt with a snarl, slamming it on the hood of his cruiser. "This is bullshit," he spat. "Bitch should have stayed home if she didn't want to get questioned." Terrence didn't move, didn't blink. "You just sealed your suspension, Officer Holloway. Keep talking. You'll walk straight into a criminal charge." While the officers were being separated and disarmed, paramedics emerged from a red and white ambulance, now pulling into the far side of the station. One of them, a woman with short gray hair and quick eyes, rushed toward Danielle and knelt. "Vitals are unstable," she said. "Boy's breathing is tight. Mom's blood pressure's spiking." "We need to go," Danielle whispered hoarsely, tears drying against her cheeks. "Please?" Terrence stepped closer, gently touching her shoulder. His voice when it came was lower, but thick with emotion. "You're going. I'm riding with you. You're safe now." He helped her to her feet while the medic secured Jalen on a stretcher. The boy's hand found his mother's, fingers gripping tight. His breathing had steadied, but his face stayed pale, eyes wide and unblinking. Terrence reached down, brushed Jalen's forehead gently. "You did good, buddy," he said. "You saved your mom tonight." Danielle turned to him as they were being loaded into the ambulance. "How did you know?" "Jalen texted me," Terrence said, "and he recorded everything. You may have thought the cameras were off, but the microphones weren't." From inside the ambulance, as the doors closed and the red lights began to spin, Danielle looked out the back window one last time, past the crowd that had begun to gather, past the gas station where her ordinary night had turned into a battlefield. She saw Holloway, cuffed and furious, shouting at nobody. Doyle sat on the curb, head in his hands. Terrence stood tall outside, arms crossed, jaw locked. The streets of Riverhill weren't quiet anymore. Not tonight. The conference room at City Hall was too clean, too quiet, almost surgical. Fluorescent lights hummed above like distant bees, casting a cold blue over the lacquered wood table that stretched across the space like a courtroom bench waiting for judgment. The air carried a sterile chill, part air conditioning, part antiseptic, like the kind you feel in hospitals or morgues. It was a room built for decisions, not comfort, and that morning every corner of it felt like it was holding its breath. Danielle sat stiffly in a cushioned chair that felt harder than metal. Her shoulder was wrapped in clean white gauze, the bandage visible under the loose collar of her navy sweatshirt. Her face was pale but firm. She wasn't crying anymore, that was hours ago. Now her jaw was set, her spine straight. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted consequences. Jalen was curled beside her, small but composed, a blanket draped over his lap and a plastic hospital cup of orange juice clutched in both hands. He hadn't said much since the ambulance ride, but his eyes were no longer dazed. They were focused, alert, watching everyone in the room with the wary gaze of someone who had been forced to grow up in a matter of minutes. He'd heard things no 10-year-old should hear, seen his mother brutalized in front of him, felt the sharp sting of a stranger's hand across his cheek, and still, he'd stayed present enough to press record. The adults were realizing now that this child wasn't just a witness. He was the reason they were all here. Across the room stood Christopher Hall. The mayor, yes, but in this moment he was only her brother. And Jalen's uncle. His suit was perfectly pressed, but his hands were shaking slightly as he gripped a black tablet. The screen glowed with a paused video feed. He hadn't spoken yet. He was watching, listening. The room was still except for the faint crackle of the speakers and the subtle clicking of a legal aid's pen behind him. The video played. First there was static, then color. Gas station lights, Danielle's voice calm and clear, the moment her phone hit the pavement, the thud of her body against the hood. Then came the worst part, the slap, crisp, unmistakable, and Jalen's scream. A boy's voice crying out, followed by the wet wheeze of his lungs tightening, then Doyle's voice mocking, Holloway laughing like it was a skit. And then silence. Hall pressed pause. The room stayed frozen. Danielle leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "Tell me you're not going to let this slide." "I'm not," Hall said. He didn't look at her. He was still staring at the frame on the tablet. "We go public. When the press conference began, it was held not in the grand rotunda, but in a smaller, plainer media room with beige walls, a flickering exit sign, and wires trailing like veins behind a single microphone. No flag waving, no theatrics, just a table, a mic, and a storm about to land. Reporters were already agitated, muttering, adjusting their camera angles, whispering names as they checked their phones. They didn't expect a bombshell this early in the morning. But the energy shifted when Hall stepped forward. He wasn't angry. He was surgical, cold. He placed both palms on the table and spoke without notes. "Last night," he began, "2 officers in our city abused their power. They assaulted a woman, a nurse, a mother, in front of her child. They insulted her, mocked her, and used force without cause. Then they struck the child." The press room stiffened. Pens dropped, fingers hovered over keyboards. They believed they could act without consequence because they thought there were no cameras, no evidence, but they were wrong. Behind him, the screen flickered. Images from the gas station filled the backdrop. Danielle's terrified face, Jalen reaching for his inhaler, the moment Doyle raised his hand. No filters, no edits. The room exploded. Questions fired like machine gun rounds. Is it true the victim is your sister? Was the boy hospitalized? What charges are being filed? Hall held up a hand, voice cutting through the clamor. This is not about family. This is about justice. This city does not protect abusers in uniform, not anymore. Across town, the precinct was a different world. Stark lighting, clacking boots, the scent of stale coffee and duty. Doyle and Holloway were sitting in the back room, cuffed to a steel bench. Their faces were flushed, not with shame, but fury. This is bullshit, Doyle spat, twisting his wrists against the cuffs. They're throwing us under the damn bus over some loud bitch and her fake-ass asthma kid. A young officer nearby winced but said nothing. You let 'em film this circus, Holloway barked. They'll crucify us. You think the public gives a damn about the truth anymore? Hell no, they want a show. But no one answered them, because no one believed them. By mid-afternoon, the video had gone viral. Headlines screamed across every screen. Nurse assaulted at gas station by police. Child with asthma struck during arrest. Mayor Hall demands accountability. Hashtags poured in. Protect black children. Justice for Danielle. Accountability now. The city didn't just react, it roared. Protesters began to gather outside the courthouse steps, not with megaphones, but with baby strollers, nursing scrubs, firemen's jackets. Ordinary people. Danielle's neighbors, her patients, her co-workers. Back in the quiet corner of City Hall, Danielle sat with her son tucked against her side, watching the chaos unfold on a TV mounted to the wall. Her fingers absently brushed Jalen's curls. He was dozing now, tired but safe. Breathing easy. She looked at her brother, her voice barely above a whisper. You think they'll really be held accountable? Hall's answer came slow, honest. If they're not, this city's not going to stay quiet. Outside, sirens echoed in the distance, not in anger, but maybe, just maybe, in change. The courtroom was packed, not with strangers, not with media types chasing clicks, but with people who knew the truth before it ever hit the news. Nurses still in scrubs, janitors on break, teachers with tired eyes, mothers holding their kids close on their laps. There were no slogans, no chants, just silence. Heavy, dense silence that sat on every shoulder like weight. The kind of quiet that says, we've seen this before, but this time we showed up. Danielle sat near the front, her arm in a sling, her son beside her, holding her free hand with both of his. Jalen was dressed in a button-up shirt and little black dress shoes. He looked like he was going to church, but his jaw was clenched like a man 3 times his age. He hadn't spoken much in the past few days, not because he was scared, because he was listening. Mayor Christopher Hall entered through the side door, not in a suit this time, but in a charcoal gray pullover and slacks, no tie. He wasn't here as mayor today. He was a brother and an uncle and a citizen. He gave Danielle a small nod and she returned it. Nothing needed to be said, not now. The judge entered. Gavel, order. The state called its witnesses. They didn't need to paint a picture, the video did that. They just pressed play. Everyone watched, again, as Doyle shoved Danielle into the hood of her car. As Holloway laughed, as the boy cried, as the slap landed. The gasps weren't dramatic. They were weary, like wounds being reopened. Doyle's attorney tried to spin it, said Danielle had a hostile posture, said Jalen was trained to manipulate adults. Holloway's lawyer called it a misunderstanding, a routine stop gone tense. But then came the tech from the gas station. An older man, white, soft-spoken. He explained how the security camera had been down for weeks, and just the morning of the incident he'd reconnected it. The footage was recorded, time-stamped, synced perfectly with Jalen's audio file. Nothing could be denied. When Danielle took the stand, she didn't cry. Her voice was calm, slow, controlled. She spoke like someone who had gone over every second of that night in her head 1,000 times. I wasn't scared for myself, she said, eyes locked on the jury. I was scared they wouldn't let me get to my son's inhaler in time." Jalen wasn't asked to speak, but the judge allowed the court to hear his recording. Every breath, every plea, every insult. Holloway calling Danielle a welfare queen with an attitude, Doyle mocking Jalen. "What's wrong, little man? Mama teach you to fake asthma for free pills?" When the jury returned, there was no suspense. Guilty on all counts: excessive force, assault, child endangerment, filing a false report. The judge's words were firm. "This court finds both defendants not only guilty, but unfit to wear the badge of this city. You are hereby stripped of all law enforcement credentials and remanded to custody pending sentencing." Danielle didn't smile, neither did Hall, but the tension in the room, years, decades, generations of it, cracked just slightly, like a storm lifting, like breath after being held too long. Outside the courthouse the crowd had grown, not a protest, a presence. They didn't chant, they didn't yell, they simply stood. Some held signs, sure, but most just stood, shoulder to shoulder, facing the building like it was a mirror. They weren't celebrating, they were witnessing. Danielle and Jalen exited quietly. A few people clapped. One woman reached out and touched Danielle's hand gently. "Thank you," she said, "for not staying silent." Danielle looked at her boy. "He's the one who didn't stay silent." Hall approached, handed Jalen something small, a police badge, bent, burned at the edges, encased in glass, not as a trophy, as a reminder. "This was mine," Hall said softly. "I left the force 15 years ago when I realized the uniform doesn't protect everyone. Maybe one day it will, but it starts with people like you." Jalen blinked, unsure if he should take it. Danielle nodded. "Go ahead." He reached out, took the glass frame, and held it tight against his chest. 3 weeks later, the city voted to pass the Jalen Carter Act, a new law requiring all traffic stops to be body cam mandatory, with jail time for deactivating equipment or falsifying records. A new civilian oversight board was sworn in with Danielle as a lead advisor. She didn't want it, but she showed up anyway, because change doesn't happen when you're ready. It happens when it has to. Jalen went back to school. A little quieter, a little taller. Sometimes kids asked him what it was like. He just shrugged and said, "Loud." When asked if he wanted to be a cop one day, he'd say, "No, I want to be a doctor. But I'll remember what I saw." Danielle went back to work. One night, while treating a patient, an older black woman grabbed her hand and whispered, "You made it easier for the next nurse who looks like you." Danielle just nodded, because sometimes that's enough. Not justice, not peace, but a shift, a crack, and from a crack comes light. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.